Hey guys, it's Dragnoria. I've made multiple videos on Xiao overall, whether that be the best artifact sets to farm for him, the best weapons and builds for him, whether you're free to play or have 5-star weapons. I've also discussed his constellations, his talents, and what he's more than likely going to be, which, if you aren't familiar, is more than likely he's going to be a main DPS. Considering how he performed in the beta and how he continues to perform, most people are inclined to assume he's going to be a main DPS, or at the very least a burst DPS. So today, instead of looking at him overall and discussing his builds, weapons, artifacts, constellations, we're just going to be singling out his constellations in this video and discussing if they're worth rolling for. Mind you, I'm not saying that you objectively should or should not roll for these constellations. I'm instead going to be analyzing if it's really worthwhile and does it change the overall playstyle of his character. If you only admire Xiao because he looks cool or because you want a nice polearm user, then either way, yeah, you can roll for him, get him, and you don't need his constellations. But if you are looking for an animal main DPS in particular and are considering Xiao, that's what we're going to be taking a look at. If it's worth continuously going for his constellations, if they really changed the way his character plays out, much like Totalia did. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, Xiao's first constellation only affects his elemental skill. It adds an additional charge to it, meaning that he will have in total 3 charges for his E. This means that it gives you 3 opportunities to dash around, deal animal damage to characters, generate energy for Xiao or other animal characters, and 3 times to escape combat. The reason I'm saying you can escape combat with it is because it's a lunge forward you can use to get out the way of attacks, and as such you may be able to use it to iframe through certain enemy attacks and avoid taking damage, which may be especially useful in Decipherable Abyss considering how hard the enemies hit at later stages. As such, in my opinion, I only recommend going for his first constellation if you plan on using him with an ult spam based build without other animal party members, because his elemental skill, or his E, will generate elemental particles which are of the animal element, meaning that you will get his ult up faster. However, it may not be worth it if you have characters like Venti, Jean, or Sucrose, or the animal main character in your party, as they do the same thing. His second constellation increases his energy recharge by 25% when he's not active and out in the field, but when he's in the party. This once again affects and is useful for an ultimate spam based build, but doesn't benefit your party overall. So if you plan on having Xiao out constantly, this isn't worth going for it. Though if you do plan on switching out to someone like Bennett to lay down their ult, or Sucrose or another character, then it may be more beneficial to have this constellation and get its ult back quicker. Me personally, I am not caring too much for this constellation as I intend to have Xiao out constantly on the field, so I won't get that benefit from the 25% increased energy recharge. And even if I do swap out or away from him to another character, he's not going to be swapped out for long periods of time. Barbara, it's just to use her E, or Chi-Chi to lay down her E, or Bennett to lay down his ultimate ability, or even Zhongli with the same thing. I'm not intending to keep him off the field for long. As such, the benefit you would normally receive from that constellation is entirely wasted, so in my opinion, second constellation isn't worth it, unless you plan on using Xiao as a sub DPS or a burst DPS, or you're just a whale who plans on getting all the constellations anyway, in which case I don't know why you'd watch this video. His third constellation is pretty standard as it simply raises his talent level of his elemental skill by 3 and increases its maximum skill capacity or skill limit to 15. This just adds damage onto him, meaning that his skill is going to do more damage outright at base, especially if you just get this constellation early, but this doesn't really change the way the character fundamentally plays. It only adds damage. It may decrease cooldown or increase the animal damage dealt. In Zhongli's case, it increases the strength of his shield, but outside of that, it doesn't do too much else. As such, this is a pretty standard skill. There's no need to go too far in depth to it. If you have it on other characters and you liked having it, then feel free to go for it. But if you're not too keen on using his elemental skill, then you don't need to get it. His fourth constellation increases his defense by 100% when its HP is below 50%. Now, this is likely to do with the fact that his ultimate ability constantly drains his HP when it's active, meaning that now when his HP drops below a certain point, you're going to get a bit of damage mitigation. However, you can also get that same amount of mitigation if you have Xiao and throw out his rain swords or his E, or use Diona or Zhongli for this shield. And while it increases his defense by 100%, most people aren't going to be building defense on Xiao. He's not a Geo character, he's not Albedo or Zhongli or Noelle. So realistically, even increasing it by 100% won't do too much in the grand scheme of things, so I consider this fourth constellation pretty useless, as you can supplement that damage mitigation with another shield generating characters, or even just a Geo character for the crystallized shield. So as of right now, the only constellation that seems really good is the first constellation, and even then, that can be supplemented by another character, and if you don't plan on dashing around too much, there's no point in getting it. Now, his 5th constellation, once again, is pretty standard. It raises the talent level of his ultimate ability by 3, increasing its maximum capacity to 15. That is just a flat damage boost, and it may increase and raise the duration of his ultimate ability or decrease the health drain of it, but that remains to be seen. So in essence, his 5th and 3rd constellation just raise damage. Overall, they don't do anything in particular. So if you found his 3rd constellation useful, then this may be a constellation that you want to pick up too, because it raises the damage of his ultimate ability, and if you plan on using him constantly, it's really worthwhile to get. His 6th and final constellation allows the usage of its elemental skill without needing to wait for its cooldown to end, so long as you hit 2 or more enemies at once when its ultimate is active. Now, if you have his 1st constellation, which if you're considering his 6th, you most likely have, you already have 3 charges of his elemental skill, meaning that this may not affect you too much unless you're going to be spamming that elemental skill constantly. And for most people, considering the prerequisite for activating this or having this effect happen is that you need to have his ultimate active, you're not going to be taking advantage of that because most people will be doing a plunging attack or normal and standard attacks, considering the damage on them is increased due to his ultimate being active. As such, in my personal opinion, this 6th constellation isn't too useful unless you plan on continuously spamming or building for his animal damage, which is what his elemental skill deals and his ultimate ability deals. So if you plan on using Viridescent Venerer on them, then these 6th constellation and his 1st constellation may be extremely useful, but otherwise you may not receive any benefit from having them. As such, overall, his 1st constellation is okay, it's pretty decent, but you start with 2 charges, so it's not too useful. His 2nd constellation requires him to not be on the field, which most people, especially if they're saving for him, are going to constantly use him. His 3rd and 5th constellation are just flat damage increases to his elemental skill and elemental burst. And while they raise the maximum talent level you can have, to take advantage of that you have to get him to the highest talent levels, so there may be no point in it unless you plan on, raising him to that level. His 4th constellation may be a defense increase, which increases his survivability, but you can supplement that with a much better shield, or using a character like Bennett to constantly heal. So you're not getting any benefit from having a 100% defense increase, since most people won't have too much defense built onto him. His 6th constellation requires you to constantly spam out his elemental skill when his ultimate is active, so you won't get the benefit of that if you just plan on doing plunging attacks or normal and charged attacks when his ultimate is active. As such, in terms of constellation, his 1st constellation is the only one I'd really consider. Otherwise, all of these others aren't too useful in the way I plan on playing him. However, as these constellations are based on the beta footage, we don't know if they're confirmed, we don't know if they will be changed, but just as of right now with this information we currently have, that's my personal opinion on this. I won't be needing to roll for a C6 Xiao. As in my personal opinion, even Zhongli with his C2 got slightly more benefit from it and utility from it since it automatically gave him a shield when he used his ultimate ability. Whereas in this case, some of Xiao's constellations require him to not be on the field, other ones require specific use cases, whilst his 4th one requires you to build defense on him to get any sort of realistic benefit from it. Whereas you could supplement that with a geo-based character. So this is good in the sense that if you're free to play and only want one Zhongli, you get the maximum benefit from him and you don't need his C6 for him to be good. But this means if you're a whale and you plan on getting C6, you're not going to be seeing much different from a free to play player, aside from an additional elemental skill charge, or the unlimited usage of his elemental skill once you hit 2 or more enemies, which once again you won't be seeing the benefit from that if you're facing a solo boss. Either way, that's just my opinion. If you enjoyed it, you can feel free to leave a like. You can comment down below if you're going to be going for his constellations, or if you're just getting one copy of him and that's it. Either way, I hope you're excited for Xiao, as I know I am and many people at this point are. I hope when you roll for him, you get him on like the first 10, that way you don't need to go all the way to pity. Once again, this is all based on beta footage, so this may change, and I'm not saying you can't be excited for the character. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm excited for the character. I'm just saying that as of right now, with the old beta information we have, his constellations don't change the way he plays too much, which is really good considering you won't have a situation like Child in that his C6 changes everything, or you won't have a Zhongli situation in that a lot of his kit is built around him having those constellations, and that's where you get a lot of value from him. So my personal opinion, I'm still going to roll for Xiao. I'm excited for him. I like the way he looks. I like the way he plays, but I'm not going to be getting his constellations, which is a really big relief. Regardless, I hope to see you guys next time. Feel free to leave a like if you liked it. Comment down below what you're going to be doing, what your build is, and I hope to see you guys next time.